I still have the op order. Page 3, roster column 2, halfway down. Her name, her job title listed as administrative liaison, and a 4-digit extension for internal reachback. That was it. That was all they gave her on paper. I know because I typed the roster myself, first week at the compound, and I typed exactly what Colonel Yates handed me. Title extension, nothing else. I remember thinking she must be new, maybe transferred from a desk somewhere south. She sat at the back table during the brief. She had a yellow legal pad and a pen. Nobody looked at her twice. That was 16 days before everything went sideways. And I have thought about that roster entry almost every morning since. My name is Kessler. I was a civilian intelligence analyst, 2 years in country, posted to Fob Aldrin, an eastern border compound running joint operations against a known smuggling corridor. Small post, maybe 40 personnel on any given week, mix of military and civilian contractors, rotating infantry security, the occasional visiting officer. I am not a soldier. I carry no weapon. I sit at a desk, read signals traffic, and write summaries that go up the chain. I tell you this because what I saw that night, I saw from a desk, and what I saw from a desk was enough to change what I thought I knew about. Competence, and courage, and the cost of underestimating someone who will never ask you to correct the mistake. Her name on the roster was Warrant Officer D. Carlon. I learned later that the D stood for Dana, and that almost no one had used it in 11 years. She showed up to every morning meeting for 2 weeks. She sat in the back. She took notes on the yellow legal pad. Colonel Yates ran the briefs, short, aggressive, mission-focused. On day 4, he asked her to get coffee refills from the supply rack outside the door, and she did it without a word. On day 9, he handed her a second pad and told her to start keeping a meeting log by date and attendee. She did that too. On day 11, Lieutenant Marr, who ran tactical planning and had a way of filling every silence with his own voice, called her the back table lady in front of 8 people, and at least 3 of them laughed. She wrote something on the legal pad. I couldn't see what. I want to say I said something. I didn't. The op itself was a 3-element push into the Callan corridor, a 6-kilometer stretch of gray zone road running between 2 population centers, where a distribution network had been moving product and personnel for 18 months. We had a thread on a courier node, a specific building, a specific contact, a time window of maybe 4 hours before the window closed. Yates had been working toward it for 6 weeks. It was his op, his planning, his timeline. He briefed it on a Thursday morning, and she sat in the back and filled the 3rd page of the legal pad, and nobody asked her a single question. The element pushed out Friday at 0400. By ZO613, the lead element had lost comms. By ZO641, the second element reported the safe house address was burned. The network had already moved. The node was empty, and somewhere in the inner block of the corridor, there were 3 operators from the lead team who had gone dark and were not coming out the way they went in. Yates had the radio. He had 2 officers working alternative extraction routes on the map. The compound was wide awake, quiet in the particular way that means nobody has a good option, and everyone knows it. She came up from the back table. She didn't raise her hand. She walked to the front of the room and stood beside the map and said, "I've been inside." Yates turned around. He had the handset in his right hand and a grease pen in his left, and his face did a thing I have seen men's faces do when something doesn't match the file they have built in their heads. A flat second of recalibration. "Inside where?" he said. "The inner block. The secondary corridor off the market gate. I know which building they're in." He looked at her. She waited. She wasn't pushing. She wasn't angry. She had both hands loose at her sides, and she was watching him the way a person watches a map. Patient, reading the terrain, waiting for the relevant fact to become obvious. "You're an administrative liaison," he said. "Yes, sir," she said. "And I've been inside. There were 8 of us in the room. Nobody spoke." Yates looked at the map, then at her, then at the handset, and then he made the kind of decision commanders make when the weight of 3 men dark in a hostile corridor outpaces the weight of the file on the desk in their head. He said, "Brief me." She briefed him in 4 minutes. She knew the block layout, the checkpoint positions, the rhythm of the market gate traffic at that hour, and 2 extraction routes the team had not considered, because both of them required moving through a part of the corridor where no one with a rifle and a uniform would survive unnoticed. She talked about the building in terms I recognized from surveillance traffic I had been reading for weeks. Specific details, specific angles, specific timings. Details that were not in any brief I had typed. When she finished, Yates said, "I'll get you a 4-man element," she said. "That will get them killed. I'll go alone." The silence was a different kind this time. "I need you to authorize it and stay off my frequency," she said. "I'll be back before 900. I want to tell you that Yates said something decisive and commanding, and it all felt organized and controlled. What he actually did was look at her for a long moment, and then he said, "Kessler, log it," and handed her a radio, and she walked out. I logged it. 0704 hours, single operator, Warrant Officer D. Carlan, moving into the Calland corridor, alone, on foot, in plain clothes, no plate carrier, no visible weapon. I did not know what she was carrying or where she had it, and I did not ask, and I have since stopped wondering about the answer. I sat at my desk for the next 3 hours and 41 minutes, and I listened to the compound breathe. At 0748, a single transmission came over the secondary frequency. Not the tactical net, the other one, the one I had never heard used in 2 years at the compound. 2 words and a call sign. I wrote it down because writing things down is what I do. The call sign was Thorn Gate. The 2 words were, third building. At 0811, Corporal Yen at the south checkpoint reported voices on the outer wire. Friendlies, 3 of them, moving slow. He said one of them was being carried. All 3 made it through the gate. None of them could tell us exactly how they got from the inner block to the outer wire because, they said, they had been guided in the dark by someone who moved ahead of them and told them where to step and when to stop and when to go, and that person was gone by the time they crossed into the checkpoint light. At 0843, a second transmission on the secondary frequency. 1 word this time. Done. At 0851, she walked back through the main gate, yellow legal pad under her arm. She had a scratch along her left jaw, dried, already cruising past the stage where it needed anything. Her jacket had dust on both elbows and a dark stain on the right sleeve that I did not look at too long. She walked to the back table and sat down and set the legal pad in front of her. General Harwick was in the compound that morning, Theater Command, passing through on a 2-day assessment tour. He had arrived at 0600 before the trouble, and he had been in Yates's office during most of it. He came out into the main room at 0855, moving through on his way to the vehicle bay, and Yates was behind him summarizing the morning for the debrief package. Harwick stopped in the middle of the room. He was looking at the back table. He was looking at her. She was writing something on the legal pad and had not looked up. I have been in rooms when generals enter them. The room adjusts. Something straightens. Harwick was not adjusting to the room. He was standing still in a way that was different from the stillness of authority. It was the stillness of a man who has just recognized something, the way you recognize a road you traveled once years ago and thought you would never see again. He said quietly, "Not to Yates, not to anyone in particular. Is that Thorn Gate?" Nobody answered for a moment. Then she looked up from the legal pad. She did not stand. She did not loot. She looked at him the way she had looked at everything else in that room for 16 days. Patient, level, reading the terrain. "Yes, sir," she said. He was quiet. The room was quiet. Yates had stopped moving behind him. Then General Harwick did something I have turned over in my mind since that morning, and have still not found the right container for. He squared himself to her, not to the room, not to Yates, not to the debrief agenda on his schedule, to her. And he rendered a full, deliberate, 4-count formal salute to a woman sitting at a back table with a yellow legal pad and a scratch drying on her jaw. She returned it. Seated, correct, clean. Then she set her hand back on the legal pad. He held his for a beat, past the return. Then he lowered it and he said 2 words. 11 years. She didn't say anything. She went back to writing. I found out afterward the way you find things out at a compound. Pieces, fragments, a name attached to a number attached to a region, nothing confirmed, nothing sourced. 16 years of service, not 11. Harwick's number was what he knew, which was the subset of what she had done that anyone above her pay grade had been cleared to see. 4 theaters. Operations that did not have public designations. A corridor entry in a hostile urban zone that had been attempted twice before her, both times with 4-man elements, both times unsuccessfully. A call sign that a 2-star general, with everything a 2-star general carries in his head, recognized on sight across a room. I thought about the men in those 4-man elements. I thought about what it cost to run that corridor twice with 4 trained operators and come back empty, and what it means that she looked at the same problem and said, alone. Not as a boast, not as a demonstration, as an assessment. She had been inside. She had done the arithmetic on what 4 uniforms and 4 rifles would announce to a corridor that was watching for exactly that, and she had done the arithmetic on what 1 person in plain clothes, who knew the building angles and the checkpoint timing and the market gate rhythm, could do instead. The answer was alone. She had simply calculated the answer and stated it. The legal pad is what I keep thinking about. She sat at that back table for 16 days, and she filled 4 legal pads with meeting notes and coffee runs, and the attendee log Colonel Yates had assigned her And she was something else entirely the entire time, and the legal pad and the other thing were not in conflict for her. She was both. She did both. She did not need the room to know. I have a copy of the op order, page 3, column 2, halfway down. Administrative liaison. 4-digit extension. I keep it in the left drawer of my desk. I take it out sometimes when I'm writing a roster, and I want to remember what the paper doesn't tell you. And what the paper doesn't tell you is almost always the whole story. She was gone by the time the debrief package was finalized. No outbrief, no handshake, no forwarding address on the extension column. Just the yellow legal pad, left on the back table, all 4 pages filled. The meeting log, the attendee signatures, the date and time of every brief for 16 days, everything Colonel Yates had asked her to keep. Neat, complete, accurate. I filed it with the admin package. I didn't know what else to do with it. I still don't know her full record. I have clearances and access and 11 months left on this posting, and I have not looked for the file. I have thought about this, and I think I have not looked because what I know is already sufficient, and what I know is this. There is a general with more operational history than I will ever accumulate who stopped in the middle of a room and saluted a woman at a back table and held it past the return. And the only thing he said was how many years he had known what she was. And she went back to the legal pad. She had work to finish. That is what competence looks like when it has nothing left to prove.